welcome. You heard me chat a little bit, and this is almost a continuation, this webinar from the grid failure webinar we had held that dealt with some of the risk issues and how you consider those in your own business environment, as well as what the consideration for your consumers, for your clients as well. So I'm first going to ask if Barry just wanted to say maybe one thing from his side as the chair of Non-Life Exco, who does all the work in the background to bring these webinars to you. Barry, good morning.
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning to all those who are participating in this rather chilly again morning. Yeah, first of all, I would just like to thank in advance Bram, Laurentia, and Irfan for the amount of work that they've put in the background to putting this together for us. And I'm saying it in advance, but I think our takeaway from this session today, and also following that of the grid session we had, was that we're in a changing landscape. Business is changing. The insurer markets, the reinsurer markets are changing. And what we need to be taking out of this is different ways of doing business, different ways of advising our clients, in particular in and around that of risk management and risk mitigation. And I will say, as a follow-up to this webinar, we are and have created a relationship with the Institute of Risk Management SA, who have agreed to work with us in promoting and giving a better understanding to all of our members, in particular those in the SMME medium-sized businesses, to say, what is this thing all about, and how do we implement it for our own businesses and in also advising clients. So I think let's listen to Bram and team, and just bearing those thoughts in mind to say, we need to employ what we're going to hear today going forward in our own businesses and that of advising clients. So, Sandra, thank you very much again for hosting, and I will leave it back to the team.
Thank you so much, Barry, as always. And yes, I know he's quick to thank everybody else, but this content and this information wouldn't be brought to you without the efforts as the chair of the Non-Life Exco. So we really do appreciate you every day. I'm going to hand over initially to Bram Pretorius. We heard from Bram during a grid failure webinar, and as we found out this morning, he's a YouTube sensation. We uploaded the grid failure webinar, so if you didn't get to see it, it is on our YouTube channel. Bram is heading up the business resilience division for Marsh Africa, and his main activities include supporting clients of Marsh with business resilience solutions. He has, over the years, successfully implemented various business continuity management, disaster recovery, and cyber resilience projects. And I think he's overqualified to talk to us today, but that's the people that we want to hear from. And we're looking forward to the presentation from Bram and his team, who have come through to spend some time with us this morning. So Bram, can I ask you initially just to perhaps introduce your team? And I'm going to stop sharing because I know Laurentia is going to share from her side. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can see me. So as Sandra mentioned, we have Laurentia. She's heading up our risk management team, and she can do a quick introduction of herself. And then the next person you're going to speak to you is Irfan. He's one of our senior cyber managers. And then I will end the presentation talking about third-party risk. So thank you very much. Over to you, Laurentia.
Thank you, Bram. Thank you, Bram. Good morning, everyone. As Bram has said, my name is Laurentia Mahamba. I head up the Enterprise Risk Management Unit for Marsh Africa. I come with 19 years of experience, both in risk management, internal audit, as well as external audit. I look forward to sharing some insightful info with you on risk, and hopefully you will enjoy the presentation today. Thank you.
Hi, good morning all. Thank you for having me. Irfan Shavus is the name. I've been working in the industry for over 15 years, have my stripes in some cybersecurity. I'm a senior manager at Marsh, focusing on cybersecurity advisory, specific for cloud, operational technology, and IT. Hope you find this session informative and hope to chat to you soon after. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ranchi, we're going to hand straight over to you. I believe you are kicking off. I'm going to ask if you can keep your video on. That would be great. Your share screen was up a second ago.
Okay, can you see it now?
No, it's now gone off.
All right, let me try again.
Thank you.
Apologies about that.
Still not up as yet.
I wonder what is going on. Just a sec.
No.
Please confirm once you're able to see it.
Sure. I would suggest there we go. Okay. It's coming up.
Okay.
Looks good. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Now I'm just gonna try and switch on my camera. Good morning, everyone, once again. I think we've done the introductions. I will then skip on right to the next slide. The first part of the presentation is just to give you a global overview of what business executives globally are concerned about when it comes to global risks. This view in front of you is populated by the World Economic Forum with the assistance of Marsh. We have partnered in the past to compile this view with World Economic Forum. And you will see in the next slide, we will then deep dive into the South African view. As Barry has said, we work quite closely with IMSA, and Marsh would have also partnered and given that input to IMSA to give the South African view with regards to what concerns business executives. But if I can start here, you can see the first three risks talk to climate-related risks, and these are potentially what concerns executives globally. A lot of these are interconnected, as you would see with the extreme weather conditions that we have recently seen. We've experienced the floods in KZN about a year ago, and the biodiversity loss globally when we look at the Amazon deforestation and the impacts thereof to the economy, to the livelihoods is quite significant. If we look at social cohesion, livelihood crisis, and infectious diseases, COVID-19 happened and we were caught unprepared. A lot of lessons learned for future pandemics to come on how to manage any future pandemics that might come, God forbid. Then we have number 7 and 8, those talk to the human environmental damages, the natural resource crisis. We see the shortage of energy globally, not just in South Africa, the water crisis, the water shortage, that is quite evident everywhere. Number 9 talks to the debt crisis, an ever-growing debt book, also quite evident in our country with unemployment, rising inflations, amongst others. Geoeconomic confrontation that relates to the trade wars that are currently underway with the USA and China, Ukraine and Russia, and the ultimate impact that those has on human livelihood and the livelihood crisis in general. The top concerns for business executives in South Africa, as I've alluded earlier, this is directly from IMSA, Institute of Risk Management South Africa, which we also partnered with to come up with this view. On top of their concerns is the state collapse. This particularly talks to the corruption that we are seeing in our country, with elections coming up in the coming year, there's a lot of uncertainty as well with regards to the outcome of the elections, the impact to policy changes, and what will that mean to business at the end of the day. I've spoken to the ever-growing debt book, the debt crisis in our country, both from a government point of view as well as individuals. A lot of us have high debt records with credit cards, loans, but from a South African point of view, this is exhibited by the inflation, the unemployment, and so forth. Cost of living, which is also quite closely interrelated with the debt crisis, the ever-increasing inflation, the price of food. A lot of us are unable to afford the basics at this point in time. Cybersecurity that relates to phishing, but my colleague Irfan will deep dive into this. I will not provide too much info at this point in time. The collapse, lack of social services and public infrastructure, the current crisis with Eskom, the load shedding, the water shedding that is also coming up, transportation. If you look at the railways, PRASA is still struggling to get the rails up and running. And lastly, employment and livelihood crisis, which is also very much interrelated with the cost of living crisis, the debt crisis, as well as the general state collapse that the executives are concerned about. We still have very high levels of unemployment in our country, and it will take initiatives from both government and business to make sure that these risks, amongst others, are managed to an acceptable level. I will then move on. The previous slide just summarizes the different risks that I've alluded to in detail. But as I go through my next presentation, I will be giving you a high-level overview of these different areas and how do we manage these risks going forward. I will pause here and allow my colleague Irfan to take over.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, let me just put my camera on quickly. Right, am I audible? Right. Next slide, please, Laurentia. So just a quick reminder of who I am. My name is Irfan Shavous, and I've been working in the industry for over 15 years. I'm a senior manager at Marsh, focusing on cybersecurity advisory specific to cloud operational technology and IT. So let's talk cyber. The slide you see before you, this is just some information to make you understand the magnitude of cyber attacks in Africa. So Interpol released a cyber threat report where they highlighted that cybercrime is rife and thriving across the African continent, especially in South Africa. What this report advised was that cybercrime reduced the GDP of Africa by 10%, costing the continent an estimated 4.12 billion with a B US dollars. These attacks were dominated by online scams, most prevalent in banking and financial institutions, with 679 million email-based attacks, 8.2 million file exploitation attacks, and 14.3 million web-based attacks. While not all of these were successful, it's key to understand that these amount of attacks led to that 4.12 billion US dollar loss. Next slide, please. So if we dive deeper and bring this closer to home, next one, Laurentia. Okay, so we bring this close. The one with South Africa map. This is what it looks like for South Africa. South Africa is the most targeted African country in terms of ransomware. This is partially due to the fact that we have more users connected to the internet, and this was really accelerated by the pandemic. So imagine this. There were 230 million attacks in South Africa alone, meaning that it accounts for a third of all attacks on the African continent. What this means is that cyber criminals are not sleeping. They are trying to attack constantly at around 577 attacks per hour. And that is just one form of attack. So this is just some information on the state of cyber threats in Africa and South Africa. Next slide, please. So I know not everybody in this audience may be technical. So here's a small case study specific to a ransomware attack. Put yourself in the scenario and let's do some role play, right? Let's make it a bit fun. You being the person in the bottom left corner of the picture and me being the attacker, the guy with the hat, right? As a malicious attacker, I casually scan the internet, I scrape the internet, and I eventually find your email address. Once I've got your email address, all I have to do is I go a bit deeper, I dig around, and I find that you bank with Bank X, for example. So we all seen those emails, you know, the email that comes through from your bank and it looks legit. I craft something like that. I insert malware into that email with a link. I send it your way. You get scared. You open up the email. As you receive this email, your organization has not put any mechanism in place to block it because there's poor cybersecurity practices in place, right? Now, keep in mind that as soon as you open that email and click on the link, because you think it's from your bank, I got you and you don't even know it. Nobody in your environment can detect I'm on your machine, unless you have some antivirus. But that's not what we're trying to get at. So my malware is done installing, and then it sends me a notification. So now I'm in, right? What I do next is I start moving around your network. Right, so I move around your network, I bypass some subpar security controls, and then eventually I get access to your company's data. So I find you where your data store is, and this is where it gets fun for me, because now that I found where your organization's data is stored, I can run some form of encryption, I can lock down your file server, and then I just wait. So I'm waiting for what happens next. And this is, as soon as you or someone else in your organization tries to access some data, they're met by a message that explains, I have access to your data, it's encrypted, and I want money. What do I want? I want money and I want cryptocurrency. Okay. So your organization will then spiral into a frenzy. And if they are not prepared for this, there's a lot on the line to lose. Now, how does an organization know that if I'm paying the crypto amount, I will actually give your data back if I'm a hacker? Think about it. Or how does your organization know that I haven't sold it on the dark web already? I need to get paid. You need your data, and I'm holding your data at ransom. So let's look at what happened in the scenario. The lack of cyber awareness from your end, subpar cyber controls from your organization, and then keep in mind that this happens daily. The consequences are huge. So who gets blamed? What do you do next? Who is owning the risk? And who's going to take the fall? It's a long list, and many are not prepared. This is just one form of cyber attack, but I want you to sit back and I want you to think of these scenarios of what could happen if a cyber attack shifts control to an attacker. In the banking industry, the digital world is becoming more and more digitized. It's closer to the internet. Imagine a cyber attack on the banking industry so sophisticated that it can wipe out everybody's debt. Sounds good for us that have bonds and things to pay, but not so good for the bank, right? Just one day we all wake up and we see that our accounts are cleared out. Also big risk for us. The likelihood of this is very low, but it's not impossible. What about an attack like what happened recently in Italy, where attackers overwhelmed banking systems of 5 major banks and caused a banking outage? Can you imagine the chaos that ensued? Let's take it a step further. Let's talk about healthcare. Recently, on the 4th of August, a cyber attack in the US affected computers at hospitals in multiple states, forcing emergency rooms to close and let ambulances be diverted. Right? This was on the 4th of August, now, last week. So as healthcare systems become more digitized, will there come a day where a cyber attacker can hold an entire hospital at ransom, threatening to turn off critical life support machines? Or maybe tamper with some information that doctors need to perform their procedures? Think about it. What happened on the 4th of August may just be a segue into this. You want to take it a step further? Let's talk about cyber warfare. What if a global political warfare creeps in through a cyber attack? What if someone hacks the military and activates some weaponry? Right? The pin's still not dropping? Let's talk about cars connected to the internet. We know everybody wants to eventually own a Tesla. Right? So those cars are connected to the internet. What if somebody hacks those cars? You meet up in an accident. For those of you who are insurance, will insurance pay out? How do they know that you weren't in control? How do they know that the hacker was in control? Okay. What about building security? Take it the next step. Somebody can get into your building's fire suppression system, and they can go and they can start a fire as part of cyber warfare. Again, will the insurer pay out? Not find a discrepancy in this. So this is just something to think about. You can go on and on and on. But let's jump into the potential consequences in the next slide. Okay, so there. Okay. So moving on, let's understand the impact of a cyber incident. Many organizations don't invest in maturing their cyber posture, but they fail to understand is regardless of the size of the organization, the consequences remain the same. Remember what I just said, the consequences remain the same. So looking at the picture on screen, you see the organization size on the left, there's some breach or some cyber incident that takes place. Now comes the consequences. If you look at the external consequences that can be faced, it always starts with reputation. Your clients and other businesses you may conduct business with need to be notified, right? It's part of the POPI Act, part of GDPR as well. It leads to a lower trust and confidence in your business. Why? Because why will they want to work with you? How are they assured protection from your end? How do they know that the attack didn't open them up to a potential attack? This can mean a drop in your revenue, not just revenue, but overall financial impact when the regulator knocks on your door and hands you a pretty fine. The word gets out, less people do business with you, and then there's a drop in productivity of your organization. Just keep in mind that there are more, but these are the key external consequences. Now, we look at the internal consequences. Remember, we said productivity drops as part of external consequences. Here's something else that will add to those productivity loss. Now that you have to focus on damage control, instead of improving your service or your offering, you take people who are there to guide your business to success. You're pulling them off whatever they needed to do, and they need to now address break fixes and close the loopholes that were exploited. That's also going to cost money, by the way. Then, because lessons will learn from the breach, you may have a GRC team or somebody in charge of looking at risk, and they come down hard. They come down so hard, and they put procedure after procedure in place, hoping that it's enough to protect from another incident. What this does is it takes away the agility of your business growth, because now there's just too much red tape. And when there's too much red tape, what happens? People feel too restricted to perform the job and they start resigning. Then others will also resign because they see a drop in revenue and they start fearing retrenchments, right? It's reality. What about those that resign because of their own personal reputation? Who wants to be associated with a company that's just been breached? Maybe they were looking after one of those systems. Maybe it lies on their head. Once damage control is done, even if it gets to that stage, disciplinary action gets handed down. And then guess what? More resignations. So more often than not, it's the chief officers that face the disciplinary action. And then what happens next? The business begins to over-invest in cybersecurity because, correct, listen to what I'm saying, correct, cybersecurity is implemented right after it was needed most. And this is most likely something that was not budgeted for. So you need that money, you're going to go into your reserves, take from people's increases and bonuses. People are not going to be happy again, more resignations. So there's two ways this can go, right? One is handled well, the organization picks up, everybody continues as normal, regardless of the consequences. Two, all the consequences really cripple that business. It's a dead end and you can close down, right? It's key to note that not many organizations understand this. Your CIO and your CISOs know exactly what is needed. They learned. They've got the experience, but they need to have backing from the finance team. And cyber investment, sadly, is something that CFOs really need to give more attention to and stop being penny-wise and pound-foolish. Next slide, please, Laurentia. So just how exactly can this be better controlled? Let me start by saying that cyber attacks are unavoidable. These attacks become more sophisticated and will evolve. But what organizations can do is they can make it difficult for an attacker, have the controls in place, and know how to be aware and respond correctly in event of this ever happening. Again, note that finding the balance in dealing with cyber threats doesn't mean an organization is safe. There's not one organization that they can say is safe. Meta, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, nobody can say they're safe. It does, however, mean that an organization is adequately prepared to govern, protect, ensure, and assure against this. So I've added 3 to 4 key points in finding this balance. And in the next slide, we're going to bring this all together. Next slide. Now, lastly, this is the last slide of mine, by the way. Let's view at what this might look like as part of a cybersecurity solution. It's complicated, and this is just the surface. It's really high level. Firstly, we need to understand that governance should be set as a baseline for the technical blueprint. And the technical blueprint will be the protection aspect with the relevant technical controls. So from a governance perspective, here's some things that you want to do. You have a cybersecurity strategy. Comply to industry standards and best practices like the NIST or ISO or BSI. Then you want to make sure that you have some policies and standardization in place for your operations. One of the key things that you really need to do, or organizations really need to do, is teach your people and make them cyber aware. The weakest link can just be the person sitting there. Go back to our ransomware, just by opening that email. If they were better trained, they would have known that it was, it's a hacking attempt. Then choose the correct technology. Choose what is fit for purpose. Then for BCM, make sure that you have continuity and availability. Moving on from the protection perspective, remember that hackers want your data. Data is your business's most important asset. That asset costs millions, if not billions, right? Just by the way, the average cost of a data breach is $4.35 million US. Not many people know that. Right? So these are just some protection mechanisms you can put in place to protect your data. It's not an extensive list, but just an high overview. So you'd like to control your access, store your data securely, make sure that your data is secure when it moves across and between the networks, and classify your data and make sure that wherever your data is, it is protected at all times. Make sure that there's no data leakage, right? So you'll see like some companies, they block your Gmail or something, so you can't really upload. That is something called DLP, like a data leakage prevention. So if you bring this all together, we can operate at a higher security posture and have continuous assurance of our environments, where we can constantly monitor our cyber environment to alert on anomalies and continuously measure our operational compliance against what governance we have in place. And then we need to make sure our technical solutions are supportive of having automated response mechanisms in place to mitigate threats and non-compliance. And then the part many forget, make sure an organization knows how to respond correctly in event of a cyber incident. Then prepare for the what if. Remember I said, not one organization can say they are completely safe. So ensure for the what if. Your insurance will be able to cover you. Lastly, you need to continuously improve on the cyber posture, as cyber attacks are constantly evolving. So to tie this all together, as a business enabler, use cyber to protect your organization against attacks that can disable your operation. That's a key message here. At a high level overview, I hope I've given you something to think about. I hope I've taught you something. And please feel free to reach out to our team for any further discussions surrounding cybersecurity. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Bram.
Thank you, Irfan.
Thank you, Irfan. Now, I want to say Laurentia is going to do the next portion. Thank you.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Irfan, for that comprehensive insight to cyber. Next up, I will be taking you through the integrated risk management approach that any organization can take, from a small, medium to a large organization. And we are moving from the days when risk management was just a tick in the box exercise, but now to embed it into the day-to-day operations of business. If we look at the strategy, at the heart of it, it will be the business strategy of the business, and surrounding it is the enterprise risk management approach that we're going to be taking. The risk management approach comes with different tools and technology that we can utilize to embed into the business. It also comes with the risk identification process, risk classification, and what is key at the heart of it is the risk education, where we teach every person in business on the principles of risk management. Risk management is not only the executive's responsibility, but each and everybody in the team or in the business has a responsibility to manage risk, whether it's not sharing passwords or not opening an email that could potentially harm the entire organization's hardware, software, like Irfan has said. We look at business continuity management, where you have a BCM plan in place in case of disaster. My colleague Bram will also talk to this at a later stage. Cyber, Irfan has given you insights to this. And we also look at the entire reporting, end-to-end reporting of risk management. Once you've identified your risks, rated them, ultimately you need to monitor them and report on the mitigations and the progress that you're making with regards to managing your respective risks, whether it's financial, cyber, people-related risk, and so forth. Then the next graph also talks to the risk treatment. I've spoken to the risk identification, risk treatment. This is where we identify potential solutions or controls that will help us mitigate our respective risks. Then at the end of the day, it builds into the general governance of business, where we look at your terms of reference, any frameworks that you have in place, Scheme 4, and any other related corporate governance documents. The board assurance also is quite instrumental in the risk management process, where the strategy is set and common understanding is defined within the entire business. But at the heart of it, it's enterprise risk management. We've spoken to cyber and business resilience. My colleague Bram will also talk to it. If we look at the different levels of maturity that any organization can have, we start with an underdeveloped area where you don't have anything in place, no frameworks, no process in place, no resources whatsoever. And that is a business that is just starting out to define and develop enterprise risk management. Then we move on to the next stage, where it is developing. You have developed your frameworks, you have identified the relevant governance structures, and this can be done in a period of 2 years, 3 years, to get to an ultimate phase where you are optimized. And this is where you've got your governance in place, your policies, you've defined your risk appetite and tolerance levels, your reporting is in place, the risk rating scales, the risk culture is mature, the systems are adequately embedded, and risk management becomes bread and butter of any business. And the benefits that actually come with a mature or embedding risk management in any organization, ideally you would potentially minimize any losses, whether it's financial losses, reputational losses, amongst others, but you have to be intentional and proactive to identify the risks and to manage them. It also assists in better decision making. If you know that going for project B will be too risky for the business, you are able to manage going into that project upfront because you would have been intentional. You would have done the necessary groundwork that needs to be done to manage the risk that the organization can find itself in. It also helps to comply with regulations. I know most of you work in very governed industries where there's legislation, government legislation, company legislation that needs to be abided by. It also improves resource allocation, process improvement, and ultimately strategic planning. When you do plan for your strategy, you would align your objectives to the risks. What would hinder you from achieving your objectives or your strategy? And that is quite topical at that level. Also, you can get a better insurance cover and lower premiums when you have an effective risk management process. That is that in a nutshell. But as Irfan has said, we are available to take your questions. If you need assistance to take the process forward, we are at your service. Thank you. Next up, it's Bram, my colleague Bram. If you can please take over from where I've stopped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurentja. I think that was a very interesting discussion. And I think it's very topical. And I know some of the attendees may be working in a small firm or a environment where there maybe only be 5 or 6. But these risk management, cybersecurity, and third-party risk is very pertinent to all of us, as something can happen to you. And I think one of the main takeaways I got from Laurentja's message is that you need to sit down with your staff and look at your environment and ask yourself, what are our business activity risk, as you can see in this slide. Once again, it's quite comprehensive, and as Sandra said, the slides will be shared. I've got about 20 minutes left, or maybe 15, before we can go over to, I hope, a very lively chat discussion point. But in your environment, and maybe just think about where you currently work. Maybe you work from home, maybe you have a couple of brokers in your business. What does your IT network environment look like? What can happen to your network environment, and how dependent are you on your environment? If, for example, email is nowadays one of the most important tools in our business. If you don't have email for a day or 2 days, what's the impact? Can you still contact your clients? And for example, if you look at that under infrastructure, and we also look at funding risk. If someone break into your environment and steal your server, your laptops, do we have enough funds to buy new stuff? Is it insured? And similar with theft and cyber attack, you know, if there is a ransomware, do you have a plan? Are you willing to pay half a Bitcoin or a third of a Bitcoin, or do you have you make a backup of your data so you can recover it again? Product development is a bit more complicated, but it may work where you may decide to take over another book of business or buy another firm, or you know, anything in that liking. But it's more about, you must consider your legal and regulatory conflict. You must understand what you're buying. Are there any risk in there? Are there any interdependencies? What's happening in the market? Then procurement. And I know people may ask, but what is this to do with third-party risk? But we're getting there, as you have to understand your business to understand your third parties and the risk they can bring you. So as you say, on the procurement, third-party reliance, and risk management. So nearly every day in the news, there's a case where some bookkeeper, they actually have a name for it, they call it bookkeeper fraud, where a company may outsource their bookkeeping. And this bookkeeper, have some ways of basically stealing your money. They can either change invoices, they can change bank account and invoices and pay the money you're supposed to be paying to a third party or SARS or someone into their own bank account. And this happens often, as I say, nearly every day now. It's been coming from me quite endemic in South Africa, and it may be our financial situation and lack of employment. But people are stealing, and it's often in the millions, 1.2 million up to 10 million over a period of time. This doesn't happen in one big go. So obviously the bookkeeper is trying to keep it a secret for as long as possible. But in the end, they do get caught, they do get jail time. But more often than not, you, the employer, will never get your money back to you out of pocket. And there are cases where companies have actually went bankrupt because the loss of that income was too much. So the message there is you have to understand who your third parties are and what you're reliant on there. And your third parties also include people like your ESCOM and your water utilities, as Laurence mentioned, water scarcity. How long can you survive without water at your place of work? Do you have a Zozo tank outside to cater for a couple of days, or do you close your business and go back home once the bathroom stop working? And then just from distribution point, maybe not exactly applicable to the FIA members, but maybe for your clients, when you talk to them and understand their risk and work out a premium for them, have they done a risk assessment for the environment? Do they know what their distribution channels look like, or do they just depend on whoever delivers their products, or do they have their own trucking company? And so that is important to know. And then lastly, on this slide, customer acquisition and management. You have to know your customer as well. We all know about the anti-money laundering laws, AML laws. You can't just pay out or do service for a client without knowing who they are. More and more we see that companies actually have a legal process in place. The moment they sign up a new client or customer, if you want to call them like that, they do a background check on the customer. They make sure they're above board. Because to get back to reputational damage, imagine if your new client is actually a criminal and you are doing insurance for this guy and it comes out, and it can of course happen. So you need to be prepared for that, and you need to be able to show that you have done your due diligence before you sign up your new client. Okay, next slide please, Laurentia. Okay, then we get to business resilience. So once again, the whole idea behind business resilience is to prepare for a disruption and to put activities in place so that if it is not if when, but when a disruption occurs, you have an alternative plan in place. It could be, as we mentioned, your generator, your backup generator, your solar system, it could be your water tank, it could be all of those things. It could also include alternative employees. For example, if in your environment you may be 5 or 10 people working for your business, but what happens if 6 of them fail to show up tomorrow? Maybe because they were in a traffic accident where they were all on one bus, or they got sick or something. Anything can happen. You need to have a plan. The plan may be to say, remember, I have still a list of ex-employees who left on a good foot, and I can ask them to come in and help me again, or you can outsource it to another company, but you must have a plan. So as you can see, if we look around this slide, we look at the second from right is supply chain resilience. The next slide, we're going to talk a bit more on that in depth, but more and more we see where the supply chain have a massive impact on the company. For example, right now in Cape Town, I think we're in week 2 now of taxi violence. So that's a supply chain issue, because your staff may be using taxis to come to work. Now they can't to work, also because the taxis are now violent. Other trucking companies can't deliver food and things, so it has a massive role on impact on every business. So similarly for your home or your work, think about that. How long can you survive without food? Do you have at least a couple of tins of food to last a day or two until you can go back to the shops? When we talk about secondment or loan staff, it's nice. So I've done many business continuity plans and review many of them over the years, and the person will say, if our staff don't show up, we will get secondment or loan staff. But that is, although it's a good idea, it's not really practical, because so you need more in your plan. You must know who these people are, and if you pull them into your business, will they be able to do the work? Do they understand your business? Will they be available, or will your secondment and loan staff also be impacted by the taxi strike? So you just keep these things in mind. And then training and awareness. Once again, I'm a great advisor of cross-training in your company. And I know people say, yeah, but I'm the bookkeeper, or I'm the HR person, or I'm the operations manager. That's good, but do cross skills, at least to assist each other if there is an incident, or if some person don't show, but someone else can at least do the bare minimum until a replacement can be found. So maybe just another thing I always talk about is incident response and emergency planning and preparedness. That is all about immediate action. So if there's a fire now in your building, how can you get everyone safe outside? Do you have a fire alarm or something that can make an alarm? Do you have a procedure where people know where to go? So some people don't jump in their cars and drive home. And then when the firefighting teams arrive, you don't know where everyone is. Some may still be stuck in the office. You just don't know. So you need to have a plan, and people must adhere to that plan. So maybe just something else. Crisis management. As we know nowadays, reputational damage is in everything that can happen. You could have a coffee at a coffee shop, and a plate of glass can fall from a window and injure something. That coffee shop immediately have a crisis and a reputational damage, because it depends on what they say and how they do it. So every incident that happen nowadays, there's a reputational damage attached to that. And that's why emergency business continuity management and risk management is so important. You need that processes to prepare you and protect you from an incident. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide, please, Laurentia. So this is the last slide I'm going to talk about, and then I think we're going to open the floor for some questions and answers. So supply chain resilience is a whole framework, and it's becoming very important. Banks nowadays, if you want to sign up to do a service for them, whether it be debt collection or delivering water to them, they're going to ask you for your business continuity plan. They're going to do an AML check on you, and they're going to make sure that you'll be able to provide them with what they need. In often cases, they will also go and find the second provider of the same service as a backup for you. And they may even split the business into two portions, one for you and one for your competitor, in order to ensure that if one of the competitors fail, the other one can still provide whatever that business is. So as we say, knowing your organization, before you can even start talking about your third parties, you have to understand your own organization. You must understand your critical procedures. What do you deliver on a day-to-day business? And you know, sometimes it may be a silly procedure. It may be in a broker environment, you have a process where you send, nowadays it will probably be by WhatsApp or SMS or something, your client's happy birthday. And your clients sort of expect that on their birthday, they're going to receive either a WhatsApp or a little present to show that they're a valued client. Now, if that process of you failed, your clients may become not angry at you, but maybe disappointed because they haven't received their happy birthday. So you have to identify all those critical processes. They identify their single points of failure. For example, you have receptionists that do the happy birthday thing. I know it's a silly example, but now she's on leave or off sick, and no one does that because no one even think of that, and that can have an impact. Okay, the next thing, you have to do a short listing of your critical suppliers. In most companies, there would be at least 5 or 6 or 7 really critical suppliers. And you may see they're using a 5-stage validation process. And I think that's quite interesting. You can use this 5-stage validation process for anything you want, even when you want to buy a car or a new house. So the first one is you prepare for it. You do a bit of research to understand what you want to do. When you conduct the actual exercise, you know, you go out and buy a car, or you do a validation process. You analyze the results, you prepare a report, and then you can capture the data or save it somewhere. So that's something interesting. So you have to do your supply chain risk assessment. As I mentioned, if you have really a critical supply, you may decide you need 2 suppliers to make sure the one is available so the other one fail. You can do a risk qualification, where you develop a risk register with all your names of your supply chain people on there, their contact details. You may even have a copy of your contract with your suppliers. Then you have to do a strategy, and that's where we come to say, listen, this supplier of mine is really critical. Let's say it's Telkom, for example. I have a fiber line from Telkom. If this fiber line fails, I have to send all my staff home because we have nothing. So maybe I must have an alternative line. Or maybe can I use my cell phone as a hotspot? Is that possible? But you need to have a plan for your critical suppliers. when think about scenarios, sit with your staff and go through scenarios. It's okay, what can go wrong in this building? And maybe if you have a weekly meeting on a Monday morning, just spend 10 minutes and put something on the table and say guys, okay, what are we going to do if our roof cave in this building, which is our head office, for example? Where are we going? Let's say it's going to take 2 weeks to rebuild this building of ours. Can we work from someone's house for 2 weeks? Must we go and rent another site? Can we all work from home? And that's your plan, that's your scenario. Let's say you rented your building, for example. Then the last one is ongoing governance and monitoring. It's just really about keep on talking about things. Don't keep it for yourself. If you are the CEO or the owner of your business, talk to your staff, make them part of a plan and part of a problem and part of a solution. So I think that's about it from my side. I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Bram. Irfan, Laurentia, thank you very much for that sharing and that information. And I don't know whether the content just stumped everybody a little bit while they're trying to process. There is a question, and I think this, Irfan, this would refer back to your presentation in particular, or your part of it. You know, somebody's referring to when email where there is a link or something in there. Is it when you've opened the email that somebody would then have access to your data or able to use that? Or would you have had to physically click on the link for that access to take place? If you can just clarify that.
Yeah, so there's two ways of doing it, right? The one way is if you do click on the link, other emails come in quietly, and as soon as you open up the email, it sits in a dormant state. Whether you click on the link or not, it can be installing. It just depends how sophisticated the attack was, and depends what type of malware was inserted into the file. With regard to clicking on the link, if you go to, let's just take a quick example. You go to a website, you click on, you get an email, you click on the link, it takes you to a website, you put some information. In the background, it's installing on your machine. At the same time, it's soliciting information from you. So it can be either.
It makes it even more scary then. Yeah, I always think I'm safe when I'm smart enough not to click on the link. But yes, okay, so that answers that question significantly. Barry, from your side, is there anything you want to pose to our presenters?
Sandra, no questions. I have a few comments, but no questions at this point.
Okay. And you know, from one of our colleagues has also put in here, sorry, let's just do with emails being so risky, is there a simpler and safer way to communicate with your clients? I think that's an excellent question. I don't know who.
Yes,
yeah.
You can. So it depends on the organization's cybersecurity practices, right? You'll have I don't know who works for a big corporate here as part of the attendees, but you'll often see something like Mimecast come up. And what Mimecast does is that it scans your emails, and then it makes sure that the email coming from a certain person is encrypted in between the sender and receiver. It makes sure that the links are checked for malicious sites or whatever it may be. So that is one way of doing it. Also, Microsoft Outlook does have something in there. And then there's one thing that many of us fail to do. So if any of you have Outlook open, in the top right-hand corner, based on your organization, if you see a suspicious email, you'll be able to right-click on it and then say report as phishing email. So that's just something that you can do.
Thank you, Irfan. Great practical tip. That I'm sure most of us took that as a new point. I certainly did. Barry, I know you said you had maybe one or two comments, maybe putting it into perspective around the content that's being covered here.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra, and thank you again to the team. What an excellent snapshot of risk management 101. And I believe that one needs to take a proportionate approach. And I think if we go through the takeaways from some of the slides, even if it is running our own households, we need to be aware of what we spoke today, but from a proportionate point of view. And I do believe that these slides, when we first went through the slides, I said to the team, wow, we're not going to understand all of that. And they were sick of me saying, you need to tell the story. And I do believe that Ramaphan and Laurentia, you've done that particularly well. You've told the story today so that we all understand it. I think the takeaway is then to go away and have a good look at the slides. And the first thing that came to my mind was these slides, most of them, actually form the basis of an excellent checklist, not for only advising your clients, but first of all, to understand your own business. And once you understand your own business, you then will be equipped to be able to talk to your clients. But I would say, and I would suggest, if I was in the field, I would have a checklist from a number of the issues we've spoken about today. And that would form the basis of a more informed discussion with your clients, or maybe even your own team, in getting your BCMs right and whatever, but in going to your client. Because as the market conditions harden, and we spoke about the debt collapse, the debt crisis, and that's all leading to unaffordability. And I think one of the key strategies for any broking firm should be retention of business. But how do we retain our business, and how do we have that conversation with the client? And that comes through to better informed, but also innovation. So how do we retain that client who cannot afford things? But here's another way of talking to that client and retaining that client. You may not get income from it, but now you're enhancing that client's knowledge of risk management and how they run their own business. So I think this forms the basis of an excellent agenda item for the discussion with our own businesses and our own clients. If I may just quickly run through making notes of the slides. And I mean, from a takeaway point of view, the cybersecurity case study and the impact of a cyber incident, I think that really highlights to say, so what is our role as the broker in this? What we tend to say, and I've heard it from a lot of people, yeah, but we have a cyber insurance policy in place. And then I say to that, so what? What does that cover? Does it cover ransomware? Does it cover malware? But that insurance policy is only part of the risk mitigation. It's one of the facets that help you protect your risk. And I think that cyber, who's to blame, and then the impact is really too impactful slides. Then we looked at the view into a complex cybersecurity solution. And I'm saying there, please adopt a proportionate approach. If you've got a one-man business, as long as you go through the processes, it may be different to if you're running a 2,000-man business. And then people will say, but we don't have data. But I think every one of us, as Fana said, in our own rights, in our own personal rights, we have data which someone is interested in. So let's not be scared or so we run a small business, we don't have data. So I think that is most important. And then I think we've heard today, and what we will hear a lot of going forward, are the acronyms of ERM, Enterprise Risk Management, and it's clearly defined in some of these slides. ESG, Lizelle and Sam talk about ESG, it's environmental, social, and governance. And then also the BCP, the Business Continuity Plan. And then there was a fourth one, which was AML, anti-money laundering. We're going to hear a lot more of these issues. And I think even from a regulatory point of view, study that, give some attention to that. And if you need more information, maybe we can do something on that for the members. But those are things you're going to hear a lot more of in the coming months and years. And in closing, I would say we all have a responsibility. When the one slide says, so who owns the issue? Well, I think it's all relative, and in a business, every member of staff has an accountability of some sort to the success of that business. So I think we're all in it together. So we can't just say, oh, well, if it's cyber, it's the chief information officer's responsibility. Well, it is not. I think it's everyone who participates in the running of that business. And Sandra, that's my bit. And in closing, again, thank you to the team. You more than adequately told the story, and it was a bit of a wow for me to listen to how you actually elaborated on a number of issues, and I think there's plenty of food for thought for all of us. So, and again, thank you to you, Sandra, for hosting the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciated there. And I see then some questions did start popping through in that. And I am aware of everyone's time. Bram, can I ask perhaps, and I think maybe as a last word, perhaps from you, I see our CEO did put here, which I think maybe as if you can close off on that, if you wouldn't mind. She put there, what advice can you give to us as an industry to share our experiences, as FSPs don't generally want to talk about data breaches because there is that reputational risk. So can we maybe end with that? And the questions for those of you that are on the call, we will take your Q&A. We will put something together and share that with you with the presentation. So we are sure to answer your questions. So please continue to put your Q&A in. Bram, yes, and Irfan, I see your hand up as well. So happy, we can continue on.
Okay, thank you. And before I hand over to Irfan, just quickly from my side, yes, it is true. It is a reputational image, and people don't want to tell the world what happened to them. But maybe using the FIA as a forum and maybe make it anonymous to share your experience, so that other FIA members can look out for a similar thing. And I think Barry can also come to give more advice. But I think that could be helpful. And also, I often think, in our business, we work with many clients, so I always try not to use clients' names when I should. But you can say, someone from this industry or from a mining industry, it happened to them, and for people to learn and be able to look out for anything similar.
Thank you, Irfan. You had some?
Yeah, Sandra. So I see there's a couple of questions. I just want to run through them quickly, just answer them. So I've got one from Tendai Grace Mpepu. Can a company be attacked by sharing Wi-Fi password? Absolutely. If I'm an attacker and I get your Wi-Fi password, I'm on your network, right? So I can install something, I can move laterally in your environment, and I can do what I need to do. So absolutely. There's something that happened in Las Vegas at the cybersecurity conference. And this is for everybody. Just keep in mind, if you go to a public place and you use the Wi-Fi there, you're in trouble. Somebody can hack you. So back to the Las Vegas story. As part of the cybersecurity seminar that they have there, they put out Wi-Fi hotspots, and anybody that connects to them, what they do is they got a big screen in the lobby that shows who connected to it, what's their password, what is the email address. So be careful of these things, right? So Tendai, absolutely. Your company can and definitely will be hacked. Morde Malharba, with WhatsApp communication being so prevalent, what cyber risks should we be aware of when using this medium? Again, phishing. Somebody's going to send you a link, and then now with WhatsApp business, people are just getting your details. They're sending some random messages. Yeah, so don't click on any links there. Don't open up voice notes as well from numbers you do not know. As much as WhatsApp is encrypted, it's not entirely safe. Paul Reed. Whenever I am sent banking details, I phone the sender and check details are correct. I sometimes will ask personal info as well, a bit of extra. Right, so Paul, very interesting here, because you sort of answer your question there in the next sentence where you say, watch out for AI voice replication. Okay, so if I send you a malicious link or something, or if you got my details and you phone me, just by you phoning me, if I use AI, I can replicate your voice. I can phone your bank. I can say, hey guys, listen here, increase my limit. I've got access to your bank account now. How do you know that it is me? How do I know that it's not you, right? Can your solar system be hacked? If your system is connected to the internet, your system can be hacked. Absolutely. Then from John Stapleton. Cyber liability cover we have in place, asking them for recoverability cover. What is this? I don't think I can answer this one. Well, this is more on the insurance side. I can find out and I can get back to you on this one, John. Yeah, that's the questions I can answer. I don't see anything else.
Thank you. I
Nope.
found we'll definitely follow that up and be able to provide some feedback on that particular question. Okay. Great, thank you. And I appreciate you running through those. I think they're helpful for everybody. And thank you. I know there's still just under 500 people on the call here. We thank you very much for your time. I am going to close off. We've just run over a little bit, but we really do appreciate the input. You're welcome to pop some more questions through to us, through to me directly. You've got my contact information. Again, a very, very big thank you to Bram, Larantia, and Irfan for their time today. We really appreciate you putting this together and sharing with us. To Barry and the Non-Life Executive team, as always, for the work that you do.